Dr. David Harper, what are you a doctor of? And in that discipline, what does your job look like?
So I'm not a physician, not that kind of doctor. The doctor is a title from my academic PhD, which I got from the University of British Columbia. And then that was in life sciences. My PhD was in mathematical biofluid dynamics. I then went on to Cambridge University and studied comparative physiology, Cambridge University, which was fun. I learned a lot about the history of science there too, and in fact worked in the same basement lab where Watson and Crick had worked. It's not a posh place by any means, but and then I came back here, and I've been I really love teaching and education. So for more than 30 years now, actually in total probably going 40 years back to my graduate studies days when I was a TA. I've been teaching health, especially anatomy, physiology, pathology, nutrition, to undergraduates for about 40 years now.
Wow. And you're still doing that?
I'm still doing that. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm towards my retirement. I have enjoyed it very much, and I love teaching people, but I've just found I want to spend more time writing books and, giving back. And when you're teaching, you're giving, but you're not so much giving back. Giving back to me is taking your life's experience and helping younger people to benefit by whatever wisdom you've collected over your life. So part of it was writing this book on ketogenic diets, which was my research area. I didn't do that initially. I turned to that about 15 years ago when I was doing an interview. I was actually a co-host of a show called Think for Yourself on Co-op Radio here in Vancouver. And we had a guest on, Dr. Richard Mathias, who had studied indigenous diets. And we were having a kind of discussion about what was the cause of obesity. Was it exercise or lack of exercise? And I'm a professor of kinesiology, so I was taking the exercise side, and he was taking the nutrition side of it. And to make a long story short, it's about 80% what you eat and only about 20% what you do. And so he said, well, what do you think causes obesity? And I said, well, it's a very, towing the party line at the time, which is what I thought and taught, and it was incorrect, it turns out. It's a very complex, psychosocial, physiological, genetic condition that has so many variables, so complex, we're never really going to understand it. He just sort of smiled at me and said, no, it's not. It's your body's natural physiological response to excess carbohydrate in the diet. And I just, what dead air is, right? I couldn't speak because all of my years of learning and teaching physiology at that moment just said, oh my God, he's right. But I couldn't say it. So I took a few seconds and I literally said, oh my God, I think you're right. And that changed my career. And I just started studying ketogenic diets. I developed a specific diet from the information I could find. I started working with Dr. Jerry Crystal, who's a recent nominee for the Rogers Prize here in Vancouver for alternative and complementary medicine. And he's been working with low carbohydrate and ketogenic diets, but on mice models, and I've been working with humans. So we combined efforts and also combined with colleagues at Ohio State University, the Ohio State University, I'm told you must say, Dr. Jeff Volek and his team there. And the past 3 years have been a study on the therapeutic benefits of ketogenic diets for chronic disease. So that's the sort of research side of it. And then there's also, I view myself as an advocate for what I think is a healthy diet. So the BioDiet book is more of a talking directly to the general public because I think there's a lot of misinformation and actually some deliberate disinformation by,
interested parties.
Interested parties, yes. They who may have a commercial interest in the food that you're eating. Let's put it that way. And I think it's really important that people realize that there's actually a food-first way to treat and perhaps prevent chronic disease. So it's been a great ride.
You have a multifaceted kind of career description. On an average day, what does your day look like from a work perspective?
Right. I get up early. I do believe that the world is run by people who get up early in the morning. So I get up very early, and I spend probably 45 minutes to an hour stretching, relaxing. I do a little meditation, mindfulness meditation. If I eat, one of the things that I recommend is you go for a walk. I go for a nature bath, I call it. I live right next to Stanley Park, and I don't put headphones on or anything. I go out and I breathe the air. I listen to the birds. I smell the forest, and so I start my day very balanced. I check in with all my students and courses. And then it depends what projects I have going and what stages they're at. There's a lot of communication that happens with various teams in various places. But then I have this other hat that I wear in the private sector, where I'm the CEO of the Discovery Foundation, which is a tech enabler. So this organization is a registered charity that helps develop and sustain the tech sector in BC to provide jobs and economic prosperity for the province by supporting the tech entrepreneurs in their journey, all the way from startup, from their original business plan, through to market validation, sales growth, global markets, and so on. So SMEs at the end of the line. And so I do that as well as sort of my second job. I'm very passionate about that.
And by now it's 8:05, 8:10 in the morning?
I go back and forth, but one of the nice things, I teach a lot of my courses online, is that I can make my days flexible. So I don't mind working in the evenings. I don't mind working early in the morning. I don't really like scheduled things, and one of the things I've learned about is I'm writing a book on design thinking, is bureaucracy can often get in the way of progress. So meetings and those sorts of things, I try and make them as efficient and as few as possible. But then I always prioritize, I think, sleep, food, and exercise. So I do wear a Apple Watch, and I monitor my sleep every night. I'm a scientist, so I'm going to do that sort of thing. Food obviously is very important to me, and as a kinesiology prof, exercise is important to me. So I make sure I get that done. I did about an hour of rowing on my home water rower thing before I came here to make sure that was done today. And then I'll work. So and I think if you looked at my CV, you'd see I've been very productive, but I still start with stretching and meditation. I exercise. I eat well. I make time for all of that. And I think those are the keys to success, and also the keys to a healthier life.
So based on the idea of BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic function, exercising first and then putting your brain to work is the best way to produce new brain cells and then make them stick. So it's a good process.
I think so too, that's absolutely those sort of neurohormones that we talked about that promote the growth and regeneration of some of the cells within the brain, especially in the hippocampus for memory and so on. Those are real, and you can promote that. The other thing that exercise promotes more than anything else is mitophagy. So people talk about autophagy, which is the sort of recycling of cells, getting rid of the old worn-out cells, replacing with new cells. But within each cell, there's mitochondria, and we want those mitochondria to turn over as well. They actually have their own little bits of DNA, and they reproduce on their own. Exercise is the best thing for mitophagy. So that's why, and for all kinds of reasons, it's beneficial and helps prevent disease and musculoskeletal degeneration, and helps keep your heart and lungs working well, and so on.
So for a young person who's going, Dr. David Harper, you look pretty interesting to me. I want to have a career that's kind of like yours. What would you say are the most important personality qualities and traits that would help somebody to be able to thrive the way that you are in what is, in many ways, a freelance career?
It is in many ways a freelance career. I mean, if academics are freelance to some degree.
Yeah.
Well, I can give you an idea using your hand. And this is part of what I have talked about in design thinking. I tell people look at their hand, and I say, there's about 6 things, 5 fingers, there's about 6 things that really help make you an effective leader, an effective team player. So the first one is vision. You have to have an idea where you're going and why you want to get there, and keep that in mind. The second one is authenticity, and that sort of runs down the middle of your hand. So that's being yourself, being true to yourself, being authentic around other people, not pretending you're somebody you're not. And then the third one, which is kind of your ring finger, is accountability. So when you're working with other people, are you accountable for your own actions and inactions? And if you have a leadership role, are you accountable, or are you trying to pass the buck? And that sort of fits with authenticity. And then the little finger is vulnerability. Don't be afraid to show that you're vulnerable. We're humans, we make mistakes, we have good qualities and bad qualities. Don't be afraid to hide those vulnerabilities, just own up to them and work on them, right?
I like to say that I'm really good at making decisions, bad ones.
There
I
you
make
go.
them really fast.
I can help you make better ones.
Yeah.
But, and then this one is empathy. So any person in a leadership role now, and that's kind of what makes like this is not a very effective tool. Once you add empathy, which is your empathy with the end user of your product or service or student or interviewee or whatever you're doing, once you have that empathy, then that becomes a tool, right? And a very effective tool. So now you can turn inventions into innovations with that tool. And then the last one is courage. So you need to have courage to be vulnerable, you need to have courage to be authentic, you need to have courage to be resilient, to admit your mistakes, and don't worry about failure, just fail fast and fail forward, and just keep going. I kind of like to think of humans as like salmon. You keep swimming and you stay alive. As soon as you stop, you kind of roll over and die. So whether it's exercise, whether it's your mind, whether it's your career, I might retire from the university, I'm never going to stop working because there's so much that I still want to do every day. So just keep swimming. Keep swimming, even if you're swimming, against the tide. Just keep going, keep going, keep going, and you'll have a long and healthy, happy life. That's what I go by.
I agree. Thank you very much.